AirVenture Oshkosh, and there's all kinds of airplanes on this field from one end of the spectrum to the other. This may be the most distinctive end of the light end of the spectrum. We're talking today with Keith Sharon. I'm Dan Johnson, and we're looking at the Wasp Wing, which, well, I just got to ask you, I'm actually familiar. I used to be an old hang glider pilot, or I still am an old hang glider pilot, and it's been many years since I've seen this wing. This has been around a little while.
Dad was the original designer of the Wasp Wing.
And who's Dad?
My dad.
Yeah, I know, but what's his name?
Charles Sharon.
Charles Sharon, okay.
And we originated from Oregon. And back in about the 72, 73 era, he started designing them because of the lack of ability to come out of a dive. He hurt himself on one of the original Rogallos and redesigned it to be able to pitch himself out of a dive and
solve that problem.
Yep.
So going back in time a little bit, an original Rogallo wing that Keith refers to here had kind of a basic delta shape, sort of a big triangle. That's a little simplistic, but that was the basic idea. And in the area of dive recoverability, well, they were a little soft. You just weren't supposed to do that or something.
You're supposed to always have a up-pitched nose.
Right.
You never put it down.
Just don't ever, if you pull back on the bar, the nose goes down in a hang glider. And if you went too far that way, you could get a situation where the wing would just kind of go into flutter mode and you couldn't get it out of there. That was scary, and we did have some accidents back in those days. Modern hang gliders long ago left that problem behind. But back in that day, this was innovative. And instead of having a wing that was relatively flat across the trailing edge, flat in the sense of it didn't have curvature to it, we got a big cutout back here now. And there are tubes that go back to each side, and I see those are restrained up to the king post, and that's what provides the dive recoverability in the Wasp Wing, right?
Yep, and it's at an angle where if you put it into a dive, as soon as it's ready to fly, it'll start pulling you out. It'll let you know it's ready to go, and you can come right out of it.
Now, it's also got a little tail surface down here that I don't remember as I go back in my mind and think about the days when I knew something about the Wasp Wing. It's been many years, as I indicated, but I don't recall a tail section before. Is that something new or relatively new?
That was another one of his designs. Hill flying. If you got a direct wind up a hill, to cross across the hill, it actually vanes you in and holds your nose towards the air.
Some people might think, well, how hard is that to know where the wind is coming from? But I know a hill surface is not a big flat surface. They have curvatures and ins and outs. And yeah, the wind can kind of come up from here a little bit and then come up from here a little bit. And you couldn't always tell that in a hang glider. So this would do it for you. Just like a weather vane on the top of a barn out in the middle of corn country or something.
Yeah, you know exactly which way the wind's blowing, even if you don't have a sock.
Yeah, or a telltale up here.
See that the ground's not following the same direction you are. You're pointed this way, you're moving along sideways.
And there you go. So now let's go to the engine side of this thing. You've got twin engines on here. I see they're little twin cylinder engines, horizontally opposed. Tell us a little bit about the power plant system, and is that your innovation or your dad's innovation?
Yeah, in 2000, I designed this to fly in flat country, because that's where I live now.
Okay.
I kind of went through a phase of model airplane stuff, and so I went towards that because at that time big model airplanes were just coming in, and the ability to have
you're talking about the ones with a lot of span and stuff.
A lot of power,
those
and
little teeny tiny engines aren't going to cut it anymore, huh?
Really lightweight motor were just coming out.
Okay.
And so I was looking into these, and I found that it's possible. And so I started playing with them. And I designed, first I had a tubular design out of aluminum.
Okay.
And then it flew. It was set a little nose heavy. I had some adjustments there that weren't right. So then I designed another one that set back a little further and still tube. Learned a little bit more. And then I went to composite. Well, it's more or less a built-up radio control wing design.
Okay, yeah, it kind of looks like a wing.
It's foam core, balsa wood covering, and then fiberglass over the exterior.
Okay.
And then, of course, I buried the fuel cell in the wing.
Okay, so your fuel's all carried right in this area here on each side, I assume.
Yeah.
One tank for each wing, is it?
And then you've got 1.25 gallons
cool.
plenty for what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. How much power are you getting out of these engines?
They're 16 horse.
Oh, really? They're that
and,
much, huh?
They put out 50 pounds of thrust aside. And you get 100 pounds of thrust. That's plenty for you.
Yeah, now I see the arrangement you've got. You're on wheels. You've got a tail wheel back there, neatly integrated in the aft end of the keel tube. And are you you're just rolling off in your takeoffs, or are you running
Just
off?
get in, lay down, nail it, and go. And tail wheel come up 4 or 5 inches. As soon as it's ready to take off, it'll let you know. It'll start dancing.
Okay.
It's ready to go.
Then you just push out a little more, and off you go.
Yep.
Now, for a regular conventional pilot, pushing out sounds wrong. But what that is the same as is pulling your stick back, because what you're doing is moving your weight back a little
You're
bit.
changing your CG point.
Right.
You're putting more weight to the tail.
Nose comes up, away you go.
Yep.
Well, people have just been raving about the way it flies all week long. I've been hearing about this from various quarters around here at Oshkosh. How many hours, how long have you been doing this thing, first of all? Just in all those iterations you just talked about, how much time and span does that go back?
With power has been since 2000, so I've had 12 years of flying.
Wow.
The motors have been fairly reliable. No real big issues except one rod bearing. I had to
Okay.
rebuild a crank. And then, anyhow, the other interesting feature here that I've got is a servo controlled throttle.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to kind of look at here. Okay.
For your throttle.
So you're electrically controlling the throttle position in a sense.
So all it's doing is varying voltage from 0 to 5 volts.
Okay.
And then in the box here, I've got individual shutoffs and a main shutoff with control from side to side. So if you got
So you can.
a little more on one side pulling you, you can adjust that in.
Okay, well, that's going to get right to the next question I was going to ask you as well. Okay, so you're flying along, you're having the time of your life, and one engine, not both, gives up the ghost. Huh? How is that? Do you shut off the other engine then?
You're best off to shut it off.
It will pull you pretty significantly.
You've got enough power on one side out far enough without a rudder, you just shut it off.
Get the other one off. It was a hang glider to begin with, so you're back to being a hang glider.
And actually, I have not lost glide ratio. I get a little more drag, it's a little heavier, but if I speed up, I can still get my 8 to 1 glide.
8 to 1 glide, not bad at all. What is the weight of the total product?
You're around maybe 120 pounds.
120 pounds for everything. That's engines, fuel, the whole bit?
Add an extra 20 for fuel if you're full.
Okay, so that's without
Fair
fuel,
weight.
120 pounds without fuel,
Yep.
and another 20 pounds with.
Yep.
But you're rolling off anyway, so it's not a matter of carrying this weight like a conventional hang glider.
I can land pretty good on on my feet.
Can you? Yeah.
Running with pulling the glider, no, I'm not coordinated good enough. And I've done it, but I've also broke props doing that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I see you got a little, speaking of breaking props and things that might go wrong, you've got a little, what I would call ducting. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but at any rate, I'm gathering that you have this here for pilot protection more than anything else,
Yeah.
or does it also do some efficiency work?
Being that I only fly 18 to 25 mile an hour, I don't think the efficiency is critical.
So it's a safety issue
it's
for you?
more or
then?
less a safety issue.
Yeah,
You know
way.
exactly where the prop
You can't
is.
get your hand in the prop here. First of all, you can see it as you just were indicating, but you're not going to bump up against this or whatever people might do in a strange situation.
No, being that you're close proximity to it, you adjust, occasionally adjust carburetor from the backside.
Okay.
Starting, you got a hand crank. I usually like to put my hand right there.
Okay, and that's the method right here that you're starting it with. Huh?
That's
So you start one, then you go start the other one, then you go get in the harness, get your settings right, and then I want to go back to the throttle again now. I mean, it's a gasoline engine, so it's not an electric throttle. You're not changing. It's not like it was when we looked at the ULS that we just looked at here, the electric airplane.
Sure.
The throttle is being physically moved by an electric motor. Is that it?
it is a Futaba servo for model airplanes.
Okay.
Which 0 to 5 volts, you change that, it'll match it in the servo in the angle of the...
So it physically moves something inside. Of course, if you're flying this thing as an RC, you're on the ground. You're not up there to do anything about it.
Yeah, except this is by wire, not radio control. The wire runs up into the wing, right through here. and down to your servo.
So it's a fly-by-wire hang glider. I'll bet you that phrase has never been said before. Anyway, to get even more information from you, you're kind enough to say you're willing to put out your email address so folks that are intrigued by this, as I am, can ask you some more. What's the web address, Keith? The email address.
My email address is love2fly. It's spelled L-U-V, the number 2, F-L-I-G-H at Yahoo. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, just shoot me a line.
Excellent. I'll have more about this, and I've got lots of stuff on all kinds of aircraft from one end of the spectrum to the other, all in the light aircraft community at bydanjohnson.com or bydanjohnson.com. Thanks so much for watching today.